Sahil Kapur, thank you so much for making the time to chat today.
Hey man, great to talk to you.
I love the background. For those that might be listening on Spotify and maybe not watching on YouTube, we got the American flag and we got some very professional looking, television worthy background with the curtain. You're a big media deal right now. Talk to me about how you came to be where you are.
So for the record, I'm on Capitol Hill right now. There's a bit of drama happening over here. There are questions about whether the new Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, is going to get vacated, and it's a very fluid situation. I found a little recording studio in the radio TV gallery, which is, hence his background. The flag is not deliberate; it just happens to be there.
I love it.
Um, yeah. So, what remind me? What was your question again?
How you're I see you on the nightly television, and every time I see you I well with pride. And I'd love to know, in the 15 years since Claremont, how did you get to be where you are today?
I mean, this was not exactly something that I had envisioned or necessarily planned on at CMC. I experimented with four different majors. I didn't really know what I wanted to do with my life at the time, or at least I came in thinking I knew, and then what I ended up doing was wildly different than what I had anticipated. But the short version is I always like to write. I got very interested in politics at CMC. I think a lot of our classmates, people who might be watching this, were into it coming in. I was not, but I got into it during college during those 4 years, and then I don't it just naturally kind of organically put those two things together. I like to write. I like the subject matter, and I was writing for the various papers that we had on campus, including the Forum. There were a few others at the time. I'm not sure how many of them are still around, but at some point by around our senior year was the 2008 election, and
Yeah.
that got me very interested. And I just kind of on a whim pitched to a national outlet, tried to get published beyond the Claremont colleges, and it worked. And from there, it was an internship and then a job and then navigating the Great Recession, as
Yeah,
you know.
right. It's interesting. Everyone that I've spoken with has made mention of that, and it really like impacted us, right? But it's so great to see people like yourselves doing so well 15 years after. So in the 15 years since graduation, I know it sounds like you got your start doing some writing, but walk me through your life between, say, May of 2009 to here we are today, April of 2024.
Well, after graduating, pretty soon after graduating, I got an internship, or was it a fellowship at the time, with a national outlet in DC. At the time, it was Huffington Post,
Yeah.
and one of the few outlets that were hiring and growing and not collapsing like the New York Times and the Washington Post were at the time. So I basically, or the short version is, I moved to DC shortly after graduating, and I never left, and I'm still here. I bought a house. I got married last year.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And the job has gotten, I mean, I've had a number of different jobs. They've all been in DC. It's always been kind of in the space of covering Congress and politics and elections. And I think I've carved out a pretty happy niche in that space, and I really enjoyed it. But yeah, it started off as just writing. That's how I came up as a digital reporter. But over time, I started to get opportunities to be on TV, which I really enjoyed. I enjoyed it a lot more than I ever suspected I would. And then that ultimately led me to NBC News, where I am now. I crossed my 4 year mark recently. Um,
Congratulations.
Thank you. Just a few months ago, and this allows me to, to have an awesome digital platform, and also a great series of TV platforms now. We got the satellite, we got the network program, we have the cable channel, and
Of
we have the
course.
new NBC News Now streaming. And also podcasts, and we try to be on social media as well. It's an exercise in trying to reach people where they are, as the industry is massively and rapidly changing.
Yeah. It's amazing because so many people I follow on Twitter, including you, I follow you, but I actually found out what a big deal you are because so many people that I followed retweeted you or liked a tweet of yours or commented on something you're saying. And it's awesome to see, just like starting it from Huffington Post to seeing you on the television. It's a really amazing thing. What have you learned about yourself or just, in general about being on TV?
Well, I'm still the same guy.
Right. Of course.
I'm still the same guy, but what have I learned about myself? Um, that's a good question. Every The main thing I've learned about myself is not to assume that what I am now and what I feel and how I think about things now and my abilities now are necessarily going to be what they are in the future. Is
Yeah.
to have an open mind about things. I never would have thought. I mean, coming into CMC, I never would have thought I would have my job would have anything to do with politics. I never really
Yeah.
had journalism on my mind necessarily. I definitely didn't think I could do TV. Was probably more awkward at the time.
I don't think you were
um,
awkward at all.
well, thank you for saying
But
that.
you're very suave on television now. Honestly, it's very seamless. And to study for this interview, I looked up some Sahil Kapur compilation clips, and it's amazing. It's honestly amazing. So kudos to you for that.
Thank you. It's been a mix of practice. Like if you compare my early clips when I was in my early mid 20s to now, it probably look pretty different if you
Yeah.
run that compilation.
Are there, you made mention at the start of this about how the Speaker of the House may be vacated. Are there stories that you've sort of broke that you're really proud of?
Yeah, I mean, I would say the some of them involve the covering the last three presidential elections. That was a real privilege. Meeting the last three presidents, talking to each one of them
Yeah.
at press conferences or otherwise has been a real privilege. Um, covering every major presidential candidate as well, but also covering every major legislative fight. I mean,
Mm,
the stories that I tend to be the most proud of are the stories that I broke. I would say that I tend to be the most proud of are the ones that relate to an important legislative fight. So it started with healthcare and the ACA when I moved here. Incidentally, the stuff I learned at CMC helped me survive in this industry in ways that I never would have realized at the time because
I
I
love
learned a
that.
subject matter that happened to be
Yeah.
really relevant here in DC. And a lot of the bigger fish at the time, they were much better sourced than me, but
Mm,
I knew the subject matter in a way that they didn't, in part because I
mm.
wrote my senior thesis in it.
That's
Um,
amazing.
yeah, so that was a nice little stroke of luck in terms of timing. But yeah, it's scoops about legislative battles. Today, I broke a story about the Progressive Caucus agenda, their own 2025 agenda, how they plan to what they plan to fight for if Democrats win the 2024 election. It's going to be a
Yeah.
massive uphill climb. Very, very difficult for them to win the White House and Congress, especially the Senate. But it's kind of a look ahead to what they would fight for, and those are the kinds of stories that I like doing the most. That have an interesting political component, that have a policy side, and that also matter to people, and to try to make them interesting. That's always a fun challenge.
Yeah, that's awesome. Coming back, you made the comment that you've met each of the three last presidents. I'm fascinated by this. Can you tell a story about one or all of them, about your interaction with them?
Um, Well, let's start with the current one, Joe
Sure.
Biden.
Yeah.
I met him for the first time went back when he was vice president in the Obama administration, and this was a total random fluke. I happened to be the White House pool reporter on the day that there was a fancy state dinner. John Kerry was there, Bradley Cooper was there. I think it was with the president of France,
Okay.
and they roped me off in the press section, at kind of the middle side back of the room, and at the table right in front of me was sitting Joe Biden. Sitting right next to him was Julia Louis-Dreyfus at the peak of her Veep fame,
Yeah, sure.
and I was like, I'm a huge fan of hers from the Seinfeld days. I have to talk to her while I have the chance. And so I waited till like the middle of the evening. I was there sitting there covering it the whole time. I waited till the middle of the evening until Biden went to the bathroom, and I just kind of said hello to her, and then she was very nice. She came over and chatted with me. And then a few minutes, maybe a minute later, 60 seconds later, Joe Biden comes back and he walks over to us, and then he just does this. He just like walks right over, looks at me, said, "Hey, what are you doing, guy? She's my date." And I just froze. I was like, "Wait, did the vice president of the United States just yell at me? That just
Right.
happened?" And then he burst out laughing.
That's so
I was like,
funny.
"Okay, this is Joe Biden." But then I also covered his 2020 campaign. I was on the campaign trail with him.
Yeah.
I got to ask him a bunch of questions. That was the funny side of Joe Biden, but also the very serious side of Joe Biden that I got to see.
Yeah. That's great. How has my understanding from the very few people I know who have met presidents is that just being around them, incredible security detail, incredible, incredibly difficult to have conversations with them, right? So there must be a difference between meeting VP Biden and President Biden. Have
Yeah.
you been at all in the President Biden circles?
Yes, I have, and in the White House. So
Yeah.
the security is on the front end. Once you get in, it's very different. And of
Okay.
course, he's flanked by a bunch of people, but it's not like I was meeting him and talking to him out on the road where he'd be completely flanked by by Secret Service
Yeah.
and have that massive security detail, which of course I have to deal with all the time when I cover one of his events. And
Yeah.
that's true with every president, so I'm used to that. But no, um, once what the last time I met him was in the White House, actually at the Christmas party a few months ago.
Okay.
So you do the security up front, and once you're in,
You're in,
it's
baby.
a bit of a different story. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, I would imagine that interviewing presidents or getting, talking to them is an amazing honor, but I also imagine you must have some sort of like dream list of people you'd love to speak with that maybe you have or maybe you haven't. Who among, whether it's in Congress or elsewhere, this is a totally open question, would you just love to interview and have a conversation with?
That is a great question. So when it comes to politics, I'm very lucky. I can pretty much reach whoever I wanted to.
Yeah,
It's not that heavy a lift to talk to members of Congress. It's actually shockingly open. One of the reasons I love covering Capitol Hill is that reporters have access to the entire complex. Other than the skiff where they keep national security secrets, we can't go there.
sure.
But otherwise, we can go up to lawmakers, we can go up to the Speaker of the House, the Senate Majority Leader, and just ask them a question and and record them. And they do press conferences all the time, so it's easy to reach members of Congress. Um, Presidents are tougher.
Yeah.
Sometimes often it involves being at a press conference. It involves being at a campaign event. Campaign events, people tend to be more available. Who would I want to interview? And this is actually something that I've started doing on the side, but I'm fascinated by athletes and entertainers.
Mm,
So I'm a big Formula One fan. I've started
mm.
going to some races, and NBC has been very nice about allowing me to cover F1 for NBC. I went to the F1 race in Austin, and I got to be at the media availability, ask Lewis Hamilton a question, the
Oh, that's
winningest
awesome.
driver in F1 history.
Yeah.
Max Verstappen, the reigning world champion, triple world champion, going for a fourth this year. It's a different experience, and
Yeah.
I'm fascinated by that. So I I think people who are outside, I think the people who are most interesting to me are the people who are outside, honestly, my profession, who I don't deal with very often, and
Mm.
I'm interested in the possibility of being able to talk to them and interview them.
You said it's a different experience. I can imagine ways that it's different, but I'd love to hear you speak about how it's different from talking to someone in political circles versus, say, in F1 or athletes in general.
Well, the athletes and people outside politics are able to be more open. They don't have
Mm.
to worry about a constituency. They don't have to worry about getting reelected. They don't have to worry about, a word they say moving
Yeah.
markets somewhere
Yeah, sure.
in the
Right.
world. So or torpedoing a piece of legislation that they supported. They say the wrong thing. So it's very different. There's just not the same filter
Yeah.
that entertainers and athletes, people outside politics have, and that's kind of liberating,
Yeah.
to be in the midst of, to be around. And even like within the F1 drivers that I was able to interview, Max Verstappen is very raw, unfiltered, candid,
Mm.
straightforward.
Mm.
Lewis Hamilton, having built this enormous following and this fame, you can tell he's more cautious with his words, a little bit more on the spectrum of the people that I cover, although nowhere quite that level.
Yeah.
Um, so that's interesting to
Yeah.
hear. That's nice to get that perspective, and also to cover something knowing it's just fun, that people are just
Yeah.
enjoying it. One of
Sure.
the It's not the case in politics in this day and age. It's not
Right.
fun for people. It's
Right.
extremely important, and fewer people are having fun with it. That's been a real evolution
Yeah.
since 2009 when we graduated. When I started, the world seemed very different at the time. People were
Yeah.
able to have more fun in politics than they are today.
Yeah, it also I totally agree with you, and you're not the first person to comment on this show in that, like, we can remember being in college, and if you and I, let's say, had a political disagreement, we might understand each other's views better, we would be respectful, we wouldn't be hurt, and today, things are just so divisive, and you get hurt so easily, right? And I don't mean you personally, of course, I mean you as in, anyone having the conversation, and it makes it difficult, right? And so I think that's a really good insight in that F1 is just fun and politics are just sort of like, it's poison. It leaves a little bit of a bad taste in your mouth, you know?
Yeah, and that's not to say that that I don't love my job. I do.
Of
It's a
course.
massive privilege to be able to cover this, and
Of
if I
course.
left it, I know I would miss it, and I'd probably want to come back. But it's also nice to be able to to be able to use this space that I have with NBC to be able to dabble into other things. It's a little bit therapeutic for me, honestly. So my editors
Sure.
have asked me like, "Are you sure you want to do this over the weekend when you're working all week and next week?" I'm like, "No, this is good. Like this is good. This
That's
calms me
great.
down."
Oh, that's
Um,
great. I love that.
so yeah.
I love that. Um, Switching gears a little bit, you made mention at the start of this that you're married. Congratulations. I'd love to hear how you met your wife.
We were strangers at a party. It was March 2012.
Okay.
Yeah, so a few years into living in DC. Her name is Emily. We briefly dated at the time and then didn't, and then 2017 onwards, we dated seriously, and
Yeah.
then May of last year, May 6th of 2023, is when we got married. And this is very very unfortunate timing, but we're going on our delayed honeymoon on the weekend of the CMC reunion.
Oh
So I will
no.
be in Greece, unfortunately
That's
and
okay. You know
fortunately.
what? For what it's worth, I'll help you make peace with this. So many people I've talked to also can't make it, whether for weddings or babies or what have you. You're the first
Yeah.
honeymoon, which is, I think, really exciting. And Greece is a great location. So congratulations on that. And I hope you have a great time. Maybe send a photo out to the Facebook group or what have you. But that's all fantastic to hear. And I'm so happy for you two. That's really great. That's really great.
Thank you.
Um, Kind of going back into
You met
memory
her, by the
lane.
way. You met her. I don't know
I
if you
know. I met
remember.
her at your apart. Either
Yeah,
I'm not sure if it was your current home or a previous apartment
current.
of yours. Current
It's
home,
still current. Yeah, I
beautiful
bought that
home.
place in November of 2016 and lived there ever since. And I did it in anticipation that it would not just be like my bachelor home.
Yeah,
And so we've lived there. She moved in a few years later. And yeah, and we've lived there ever since.
I love that. Something that I'm like really truly grateful for, Sahil, is obviously I've known you since we were like 18 years old, right? But it's not like we hung out a ton at Claremont. But it's I remember you inviting me and Nathan Barrymore into your home. It was probably 4th of July 2019, if I recall correctly, and that's when I got to meet your lovely wife and see your beautiful home. And it's been such a really just amazing thing, I think, for so many people at Claremont to watch us all mature and grow throughout the years and like see people at these different touch points. And
Yeah.
no doubt, seeing your home and meeting your wife is a true highlight for me as well.
I'm glad you're able to be there.
Yeah. I'd like to go back memory lane for a minute and ask you some questions about your time at Claremont. So, first question, what was your favorite CMC class?
Two come to mind: politics of journalism with Pitney,
Mm,
and healthcare policy politics with Fred Lynch. And I
mm.
picked those not only because I really enjoyed them at the time, but they definitely had the most impact on me in terms of what happened next.
Yeah, right. I mean, those two alone, like, I mean, parlay into your career so well. I'm actually a little bit surprised. I don't know if you took the congressional simulation.
It's wild. I never took that, and I ended up being a
Yeah.
congressional reporter. But I
Yeah.
did take the politics of journalism class, and I ended up, Pitney did this thing where he had the students in one class be the journalists covering Congress in his other class, which I really enjoyed. That was the first
Oh, that's
time
cool.
I was like spinning my wheels and I try to learn how to cover. Okay, I quote this person. Here's the headline I put on this little blog.
Yeah.
I still remember that.
That's amazing. And you also made mention, just while we're talking about sort of academics, that your senior thesis, gave you insight into the way Congress works and what have you. And that's been influential in your time in the professional world. What was your thesis on? And what did you write about?
Healthcare, kind of the history
Okay.
of attempts at overhauling the healthcare system, going all the way back to Teddy Roosevelt, the first ever attempt at universal healthcare, and then to FDR's near misses, how he was afraid of the AMA, never really did it.
Yeah.
Nixon tried, Jimmy Carter tried, Bill Clinton tried. It all failed, one after another, and it happened to be right at the moment where Barack Obama was getting elected on this platform of doing what the all those presidents failed to do, and it
Yeah.
worked, and he succeeded to a significant extent. Didn't get everything he
Yeah.
wanted, of course, but that timing wise, that taking that class, writing my thesis in that, being able to kind of swim in all of that history, was extremely valuable when I
Yeah.
got here in ways
Yeah.
that I didn't expect.
That's amazing. How fortuitous. You could have written your thesis on just about anything. And my God, when was the ACA passed? Like 2010?
Yeah,
Um,
finally in 2010, but it was all
2010.
throughout,
Yeah.
yeah, late
Yeah.
second half of 2009 where they were debating it.
Right, of course. What a great, and you probably wrote your thesis in, spring of 2009. So,
Yeah.
that's awesome. I could probably take a guess, but I won't, but I want to hear your favorite professor.
I'm going to go with both of them, Pitney and Lynch, for the
Yeah.
same exact reason.
Pitney's got a lot of shout outs on this show. So shout out to Pitney. He was really a phenomenal professor. I don't know, Lynch in the Gov department?
Yeah, Gov department.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
took
yeah.
two of his classes, healthcare and inequality
Okay.
politics, public policy, I think it was called, and I really enjoyed both. It was my first kind of contact with public policy, in a way that, again, I didn't realize at the time, but now it's just my world. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Amazing. Okay, so from academics to something a little bit more fun, your favorite CMC party.
uh, I'm gonna go with TNC because of
Oh,
the
great
regularity of
answer.
it.
Great answer. Great
Every
answer.
Thursday, you knew exactly where it was, North Quad. The 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 kegs, the beer was terrible, but we were
Totally.
college students and
Right.
teenagers, so I was
But
not
hey, it
feeling
was
very picky.
free. It was free.
Exactly. It was free,
Yes.
and I was not feeling very picky at the time.
Right.
So I love the regularity of it, but I also should give a shout out to the Harvey Mudd once a semester. I think they had a completely off the hook, really, really fun party that I made it a point to go to.
I think if I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I think that the fall party would be foam party and the at Harvey Mudd, and the spring party was slippery when wet, or are you just
Oh
referring to
yeah.
like any
No,
Harvey Mudd party?
that's the one because
That's
they
the
rarely threw parties, and when they did, they all kind of went
yeah.
wild. So
They did go wild. I mean, leave it to a bunch of engineers to like build, like literally construct a perfect platform for partying and delivering fantastic experiences.
exactly.
Um, Favorite CMC memory?
Um, Probably nothing will beat the champagne at the fountain,
Mm.
when I turned in my senior thesis. They gave us each a bottle of champagne, and through the afternoon, I ended up drinking almost all of it and slept for a really long time. But there was something exhilarating about that whole
Yeah.
feeling. That really comes to mind. Another random one that I still like, it still sticks with me, is winning Battle of the Bands at the
Oh,
Motley.
cool. Oh,
So
awesome.
I played in
Yeah.
one for a few years. Yeah, we did shows at the Motley. We did some at the CMC, some at parties across campus. But yeah, Battle of the Bands.
I
Only ever won it
remember that.
once.
Are you a bassist?
No, the guitarist and
Guitar,
a singer.
okay.
Nathan
I was
Barrymore
probably
is
all
in
the way in
that
the
band.
back and I just saw you doing this. So that's awesome. What year did you win?
I think it was 2000 and either 2007 or 8.
Yeah.
One of
I
those
feel
two
like I
years.
remember this being sophomore year, which would have been 7, I think.
7,
Yeah.
maybe 6. I don't think it
Yeah.
was 6.
Yeah.
Probably 7 if I'm waging a guess, but I have to go look. That's such a
What
good question.
did you win in prize money? What did you win? Or just honor?
Just honor. I don't think they gave prize money.
That
Although
needs
that
to be
would have been nice
rectified.
at the time.
Yeah, right, exactly. Even like 20 bucks for coffee at the Motley would have been great. Um,
Absolutely.
that's awesome. Those are great memories. Um, this is, of course, something of a digital reunion, and I want to give you a platform then to give some shout outs. So, who do you keep in touch with, and who do you want to give some shout outs to today?
Um, so some of the people that I keep the most in touch with, and I would like to give the biggest shout outs to, are the ones who also moved to DC and didn't leave. A lot of people came to DC and
Mm,
then kind of left.
mhm.
And I've stayed in touch with them, but I mean, this is the natural course of life. Some people moved here and
Yeah,
worked for a few years and then moved elsewhere and moved on. So I mean, a couple people that were at my wedding, Nathan Barrymore was there,
of
Cameron Joseph
course.
was there. He was
Oh,
I believe, a
cool.
year older
Yeah,
than us.
yeah.
Um, so that's kind of, and then there are plenty of others that I keep in touch with loosely. Not as much as I would like to, including yourself.
Well, let's
Um,
rectify that. This is
let's
all
let's
about
change
being
that. Yes,
reconnected. Yeah,
yes.
yeah, yeah.
but yeah, it's the ranks of CMCers in DC have kind of thinned out over the years, if I'm being perfectly honest. But it's
Yeah,
interesting. There are always new ones, like new CMC grads, people doing the Washington program. I make it a point to
sure.
speak at the Washington program and meet the students like almost every year.
Yeah,
They're really good about asking us to do that, and we do. So yeah, I hope
that's
that answers
awesome.
your question.
That does. That's great. Okay, so lastly, I would love for all of our audience, when they listen, to have a reason to reach out to you. So I hope you can help me finish this sentence. Someone should slide into my DMs to chat about.
Uh, I'm gonna give you a few answers to this question.
Love that. Yeah,
The first is if you have any hot story tips
of
about
course.
reporting that isn't out there and that I could
Yeah.
report first, definitely hit me up about that. But beyond that, Formula One, if you're a fan,
Mm.
I've been a fan since I was a kid in the '90s, and suddenly the sport's
Yeah,
grown
blown
so
up.
much
Yeah.
in the country of these last few years, partly because of the Netflix show. And the NBA, if you're a Knicks fan,
Ah,
slide into my DMs, we'll chat. They're
Sahil, you're
actually
gonna you're,
good
you're
this
gonna hate
season.
me for this. I'm a Sixers fan, so you and I actually have
Ah,
some maybe bad blood coming up over the next 2 weeks. Though I think
yes.
that Knicks team's a good team.
They are a good team, and Embiid was really good last night.
He
So
was really good last night. Yeah.
we will see what happens.
Yeah. Anyway, I
I, I
interrupted.
I wish you
Knicks.
the best, but not the Sixers.
Yeah, thank you. You said the Knicks. I didn't want to interrupt. You said there were other things as well.
No, I mean, those are right. So outside of my job, those I mean, those are the two sports that I follow the most, NBA and F1. So yeah, absolutely hit me up about that. And if you ever want to chat politics, if you're always happy to do that.
Awesome. Well, Sahil, I can't thank you enough for making the time to chat today. I said it at the beginning, but I'll say it again. Every time I see you on the television, I well with pride, and I want to shout, "Yay, CMC'09 for doing so well." I so appreciate you taking the time. People should reach out to you to talk about politics, breaking stories, F1, Formula One, and the Knicks. So thanks so much for coming on.
Hey man, really great to join you. Great to catch up, and let's do this more often.
Love that. Take care.